Hi, and welcome to our presentation, Information Literacy from Classroom to Practice, Results of a Longitudinal Study. I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. The University of Manitoba is located on Treaty 1 territory, the original ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, and we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past. We have dedicated ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So I'm going to introduce myself now. My name is Loewen, and I'm the liaison librarian for the College of Rehabilitation Sciences at the Rady Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Manitoba. That means I'm the liaison librarian for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and respiratory therapy. I've been in this position for 17 years.
And hi, I'm Janet Rothney. I'm currently the liaison for medicine within the Rady Faculty of Health Sciences. When we started this project, I worked with the College of Dentistry and the School of Dental Hygiene, and I've been a health librarian for 12 years. So I'll go over some of our background information. So a little bit about our project. In 2014, we began a longitudinal research project investigating the uptake of information literacy skills by students to see if those skills transferred from their academic settings into clinical practice. We have some methodology discussion to present and a brief snapshot of our early findings. So in the beginning, we were just both looking for a way to stretch some of our research muscles. And at the same time, within our library, we were working on a curriculum mapping project. So this research complemented that project quite nicely. We selected the 2-year programs from within our rosters to study to try and keep the timeline reasonable-ish. And then here's a bit about our timeline. So we've got plotted out each of our data collection points. So you can see here that we ran 2 cohorts from each of the 3 programs. We spoke to them 3 different times, 3 points of contact. And then we've also plotted here our pilot run and our ethics submission in 2014. Since 2019, when our data collection finished, we've been analyzing the data and experiencing a global pandemic. One of our primary research tools was REDCap, which is a program developed at Vanderbilt University and is used around the world. It contains a number of tools to use and manipulate and collect data sort of in that in-process phase, and can be used for simple projects like our survey to very robust clinical trial data. One of the reasons we chose it was that it allows us to securely store our data on local servers. A little bit about our model, our research instrument. So we designed our instrument with 2 components, a survey and a test. We knew we wanted to mix or have a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. Quantitative specifically is hard to find across student to professional cohorts and is really the language that our faculty speak. So we needed to try and incorporate it somehow. The survey component of our project was built to capture some demographic information at each point. So the surveys are slightly different at each of the 3 times that we contact our group. And then also gather some information about previous library experience. So all of our students in these programs come to us with some university education, either a year within the dental hygiene students up to an entire degree. So we wanted to capture that. And then the test itself was based on those standards and competencies that we were working with at the time. So there's competencies from within the health professions and then also from information literacy. The test was the same at each of the 3 points of contact, and the question formats vary. So there's some true false, some select all that applies, a few short answers. And each of the test tools were tailored to the programs we assessed, but used the same structure. So we would ask the same question and change the scenario. We did not do a formal validation of our tool, but we did run the project and research instrument by a number of our colleagues, including faculty members in each of the professions that we were looking at and folks in our own library. A big factor for us was that we decided to use anonymized, unlinked data grouped by cohort. We both mark assignments in our programs and therefore have a bearing on student success. And we needed to make sure that there wasn't the risk or the perception that our study could influence anyone's grades. And we did, as I mentioned, go through our research ethics process at the university, a little bit of back and forth in the beginning, of course, always, and then just yearly updates since then. How?
Thanks. So why a longitudinal study? Well, we thought it was the best type of study to follow the student all the way to professional. And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and successes that we had with using this type of study. So one of the things with a longitudinal study is it takes time, and that presents a significant challenge to us, or it did present a significant challenge to us. Things can change over time. And for us, one of the big changes was the change in theory and practice of teaching information literacy. The ACRL went from a competency to a framework-based theory. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those details and how it changed the project for us. So I just wanted to reiterate that the dental hygiene and occupational therapy programs map their curriculum to their professional health competencies. This is really important to us for how we set up our study. So it was logical for us to map the health competencies to the ACRL information literacy standards. Our longitudinal surveys surveyed and tested the information literacy competencies, which mapped up really nicely with those health professional competencies. This provided a nice synchronicity for the development of the project. And as Janet had mentioned, our faculties were really interested in this project and what it would show, because this was, again, something that they understood well. So we set up our project based on the similarity of matching the InfoLit and health professional competencies. Right around that time, after we had set up this whole project, the ACRL introduced their framework. And that's, again, based on student knowledge, practices, and dispositions. And this change in theory and practice affected how we thought about information literacy. Where the big change happened is that we had set up a project that was going to run for 5 years based on the competencies. So we were given a little period of doubt about the validity of our project, but it's something we soon got over. So what this told us about longitudinal studies is that you have to, it's really difficult to be prepared for how things will change over time. The line in the sand that you have drawn to measure can easily be changed with a wave of that you cannot foresee, and makes a big difference on how you will then decide to take the project forward, or maybe it's going to also affect some of the teaching that you're going to do. So it was a significant change for us. We also took a look at cohorts rather than individuals. And so the reason for this is the length of time it takes to do a longitudinal study made us look at what was the best way to test and survey our subjects in the project. Our initial thought was to survey and test individuals within a cohort. We initially thought we wanted to have the same individuals in all 3 surveys and test periods, and testing them would provide us with the information we were seeking. We thought about this a lot, and then after consulting with other research experts, we decided it was going to be very difficult to control and ensure that we would get a large enough sample so that we would get the same individuals, or potentially the same individuals, for the entire test period. So, and another reason why it was going to be difficult for us is that we had trouble figuring out how we were going to track anonymized individuals in a cohort. So we decided just to test the cohort and not worry about having tracking individuals. We just didn't have the time or resources to set up a project of that complexity. And we were lucky enough to get those numbers in those 2 or 3 groups that we tested. Another difficulty in setting up a longitudinal study was designing a project where the elements of the study are way off in the future. An example of this for us was the procedure of contacting students once they became professionals. When we set up the project, we gathered information on how we could contact those students who were no longer with the university and that indeed were professionals. So we thought that we were able to work with our departments and get alumni lists from them. And this is what they told us at that time. And this is what we submitted and or proposed and submitted to ethics, and it was approved. When it came time to set up the distribution of the survey, we found that we couldn't get our alumni lists from our departments. They didn't have those lists available to them. We had to go through alumni relations, and they needed to be contacted, and a whole series of communication had to happen with alumni so that we could actually get our surveys and tests out. So it was a bit of a scramble for us. So what are some of the successes? The results. We felt that we were able to get some good information out of this. So the next couple of slides are going to show findings from our surveys. These results come from the dental hygienist surveys. So this question was consistent to the entry and exit surveys for the dental hygienists. And what it's asking is were the library's resources and services useful to them in their course of study? And it shows a marked difference in their opinion of library services between those 2 periods. The blue line representing the entry and the red line representing the exit. The next question is a survey that asks individuals how important information literacy skills would be in clinical practice. It's interesting to note that the opinion of the information literacy skills stayed consistent through all test periods. They were basically all on the same part of the scale in all 3 surveys. The next 2 slides show the overall test scores for a single cohort at the 3 different test periods: entry, exit, and 1 year into profession. These are all the overall scores for the dental hygienists. And what we expected was an increase during the program and a slight decrease in information literacy skill abilities once they made it into their profession. It's important to note that the dental hygiene students have 1 year of prior library experience upon entry into the program. The next slide shows the scores for the occupational therapists. OT is a master's program, and all the undergraduates, they all have an undergraduate degree at a minimum. So these students will have or should have had prior library experience and training. Overall, we were pleased to see that both groups showed an improvement in their information literacy skills, and that they showed some retention of those skills once they have become professionals. So that's the end of our presentation. We hope that this has given you some cause to ask us some questions. We're happy to answer any of those questions about our particular study, as well as what it takes to do a longitudinal study. So these are our emails. Please feel free to contact us with those questions. And thank you very much for attending our presentation. Bye.